Can you share authentication state across different domains? And by different domains, I mean different top-level domains, example.com versus example.ca, or two different domains, facebook.com versus instagram.com. If you're looking to share authentication across subdomains, Clerk already supports that out of the box, and there is another video on the channel where I talk about that. But in this video, we're talking about sharing authentication across multiple domains. Now, there might be different instances where you would need this. The simplest one is that you have example.com and example.ca for Canadian folks, example.org and IO and whatnot. So different extensions of your domain, which creates different top-level domains. But you want your users to be able to navigate between all of them with the same user account, or that you want to have one user base and authenticate everybody against example.com, but then redirect them to whatever extension they're at. Another example would be if you have products that are deployed to different domains. Example would be your Meta, you have facebook.com and instagram.com, and you want users authenticated to Facebook to be able to just go to Instagram without having to create another account or re-log in. This is not how Facebook and Instagram are set up, but imagine that you have multiple apps with multiple domains, but you want your users to be able to navigate between them without having to create different accounts or re-log in. The third use case would be if you're white labeling your SaaS product and your customers want to deploy their version of your application to their own domains, but you want to keep everybody or all the authentication central in your application.com and then redirect to those different domains. This last one is a bit more complex. It's a multi-tenant situation. But the idea is, again, sharing your authentication across different domains. Now, Clerk supports this. It's a paid plan, but you can try it out in the free version in development. If you want to push to production, it's a paid plan. But the idea is that you would have a primary domain in your Clerk application, and you would add what we call satellite domains that are one or many multiple domains that you can add that authenticate against this primary domain. And that way you can share the authentication state across multiple domains. Now, to set this up, we're going to have to create a Clerk application first. So I have gone ahead and created a Clerk application. Under the configure page, in settings, I can go down to domains, go to the satellites tab, and add a satellite domain. Now, for local development, I've just created localhost 3001. So my primary application is going to run on localhost 3000, and then I'm going to add one satellite domain on port 3001 that reads the authentication state from that one. Just to show this idea, it would be the same thing if you are pushing this to production. You would just have your live production domains instead of localhost. Now, before going to the next step, I just want to mention that in production, you also have to pass in some DNS records for your satellite domains. This is not necessary in development, but for production, as you would do for your primary domain, you should also set some DNS records for your satellite domains. Now, there's a video on the channel where I talk about taking Clerk to production. So if you're not familiar with that, watch that video. Otherwise, we will continue with this setup. In the next step, we're going to create two separate Next.js applications, set one as the primary connected with our Clerk instance, and then set the other one as the satellite that reads the authentication state from the first one. Now, I have created a template for Next Clerk ShatCN. So this is a Next.js app already set up with Clerk and uses ShatCN UI. There's a link in the description. You can use this to clone and use it as a template. So code, let's just clone this, go back to our terminal. I'm going to git clone. I'm going to call the first application root. And while we're here, let's also create the second one and name this satellite. All right, so let's cd into our root application, which is just basically an Next.js app, pmi to install all the dependencies. Let's open this up inside our code editor. Let me show you from a high level what this is. So Next.js app, in the layout, you already have your Clerk provider set up. You have your middleware set up. There's a dashboard page which is protected. Just to show you how you would go about setting this up, there's a sign-in page which uses the sign-in component from Clerk, and you have a home page. So pretty standard bare bone template that can just get you started on any Clerk application that you want. Let's also open up another tab. Let's go back, go into our satellite application. Let's go PMI, install all the dependencies. Let's open this up inside of our code editor as well. Okay, so we have two applications now, and we want to set the first one, which is root, as our primary domain with our Clerk instance. So there's two ways that you can set up your satellite app and your primary or root application. One is through environment variables, which is the recommended way and the way that I'm going to use. But you can also set up some properties. These are the properties that you would set on your Clerk provider. If you set environment variables, this is automatically read by Clerk inside of your middleware and Clerk provider, so it just makes it easier. This is what we're going to use. So inside of our primary domain, we have to set up the following keys. So let's go to our primary, create a .env.local, and I need a publishable key, a secret key. This is what I would get from my Clerk instance, and I'm just telling Clerk where my sign-in URL lives. Because if you don't set this up, it's going to use the hosted version of your sign-in page, which comes from Clerk. We have a sign-in page here, so we are saying sign-in lives here. So let's go back to our application. Under the configure, you can just scroll down to API keys. This is going to give you your publishable key and secret key. So let's copy them here. All right, so that is the first part. And now inside of our satellite domain, we're going to set the same publishable key and secret key, but we also have to set some extra stuff. One is this next public Clerk is satellite, so it just tells Clerk that this is a satellite domain, and we have to point it to the primary domain for sign in and sign up. So let's go to our satellite, create a .env.local, and paste this up. I'm going to get rid of the production examples because we are not in production, and what I'm going to use is these. So our domain, the satellite domain, is localhost 3001, and the sign in, well, we don't need the sign up because Clerk now supports sign in and up from the same path, so we just take the sign in. But pay attention that sign in is now pointing at my primary domain. First of all, it's not just /sign in, it has the full path, and it is pointing to the primary domain. So all we need here is just extra is this satellite true, and then the actual domain for the satellite and where the sign-in lives. Okay, so let's also get our credentials here inside of our satellite. All right, so these two are also set up. Back to the documentation. And one last step is that inside of your Clerk provider, you have to set allow redirect origins. This is so when a user goes into your satellite domain and they need to sign in, they will be redirected back to your primary. And then once they complete the sign-in flow on your primary or root domain, they have to be redirected back to wherever they came from. And we're going to set wherever they came from as an allowable origin for a primary to redirect back to that so that it works correctly. So inside of your root, you would go to your layout on the Clerk provider. I'm just going to set my satellite domain as an allowable redirect origin. Now, if you have multiple satellite domains, you can have, and you would just pass them here. This is an array of different domains that you're just allowing. Okay, so with these steps, we are now ready to go. Let's spin up our application and see this in action. So going back to our terminal, let's go to our root, pm dev. This is going to spin up our development server. And now the second one, also pm dev. This is going to run on localhost port 3001. So let's open this up. Perfect. We have our application. We have the dashboard page, which is protected. It doesn't allow us to see it unless we are signed in. Let's also open up our satellite one. Just for the sake of this, maybe I go to the satellite just to differentiate these two a bit on the page. I'm just going to call this satellite. And back here, I'm going to call this the root domain or the root application. So when I'm switching between the two, you know where I am. All right, so let's see this in action. I'm on the root domain and I'm logged out. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Now I'm signed in inside of my primary domain. If I go to the dashboard, I can see my user information. But if I now go to my satellite domain, I can see I'm already logged in there as well. If I go to the dashboard, I can access my user information from there too. If I sign out from here, I'm going to go back to the home page, redirected back to the home page. But if I go back to the primary domain, I'm logged in out of there as well. So you can see we are sharing the authentication state across different applications and different domains. This was in local development. You can have the same thing in production. You can have one or multiple satellite domains that are all going to authenticate against one primary, one root application that's connected to your Clerk instance. If you have any questions, like always, hit me up in the comments and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.